Hello everybody, this is Einar from Unity Center again with Unity Web TV. Today we have Jeffrey Wium here. He has made this fantastic movie about the Inca, some of the Inca people. It's been, the movie is from somebody that has been a little bit separated from the normal people for some time. And you've been living with them for 5 years?
10 years.
10 years. And then you got the opportunity to make a film about them.
Correct.
And they have a special message. So I wanted to tell a little bit with my impression. I saw the movie. It's totally fantastic. Very good nature, and it's about lots of people that's living in a total different world than we do. And we have been doing some videos about Inca people and Indians, talking about how we have to take care of the earth and do ceremonies and things, but I really didn't understand what they were talking about. And now we got the opportunity from one that have been living with them for 10 years to tell a little bit about what the meaning about taking care of the earth. This movie you made is called Wisdomkeepers. And we'll put the movie on the screen here so you can look at it. It costs $9 to load it down. And I very much want you to see it. And now he's going to explain a little bit. First I want you to explain a little bit, what are the Indians really trying to tell us?
Well, they're called Pacos, and Paco means a master of the living energy. And their whole work for the last really 13,000 years has been to steward this information until we in the West got to a place where we were mature enough to understand it and then take responsibility for our lives and come into harmony again. And one of the ways we say that is choose truth over power. So a lot of times we live in separation, and a lot of times we live in competition. And these natives of South America have never lost their connection to Mother Nature and all things. They live in what's called animistic consciousness, and that means that the life force that moves through all things is in deep relationship all the time, and they call that Aini, and that term means unconditional right relationship. So as you give, you receive. In the West we tend to take for our own needs, especially from Mother Earth, and we don't really understand how to give back. And the Pacos have been living this way forever, and they're one of the few traditions in the world that has never been broken by Western man. And so what that means is they have a complete cosmology. They still know how to make it rain. They still know how to use lightning to impregnate the soil to create fertility in the soil, and Western science doesn't understand that at all. So the main focus of their work has been to hold this information, and now it's about disseminating it or bringing it out to Western man and woman so that we can remember our relationships with the earth and the stars, and remember who we really are, which is stewards of consciousness. And I would say...
Can you explain that a little bit more? Stewards of consciousness, that sounds great.
Yeah. A steward of consciousness, it just means... well, let me put it in terms of their prophecy. They said, there'll be those of the north that find the light in the darkness of their time. And what that means is that we'll be able to look at what's not working and be able, instead of judging it and fighting it and being angry, we actually recognize it's an opportunity or a gift to come to loving presence with it. So a stewardship of consciousness is one that develops consciousness through their experience and then takes that knowledge and applies it to the next time they have an encounter, which becomes wisdom. And then when you store that, you become a wisdom keeper, to use that term. So one of the main things that they're looking at is how do we invite people to come back to loving presence with each other so that we're not afraid of each other, so we can sit emotionally intimate with each other and take care of each other. And in doing that, we start to expand out and start to take care of nature again. And that's what they mean by choosing truth over power. Power is the power to control or to own and occupy. But truth is about how do I sit in right relationship with everything so that when I make a decision for myself, it's based on what's best for you. And when I do it in this manner, this flow happens where I'm giving to you and you're giving to me. And what I find is in this part of the world especially, the culture is socialist based, so the structure of government, the structure of society is set up so everybody's taking care of each other. Where I grew up in America, it's not like that at all. Everybody's in competition and separate, and everybody has to pay on many levels because of that.
Wow, that's but the main point here is, what can we do to help Mother Earth?
I think it's actually quite simple. I would say just to change the world, you change your heart. And as corny as that may sound, as kind of airy-fairy as that may sound, what I have found as a Westerner who grew up without the strength of that emotional part of me, because it wasn't mirrored for me in Western society, that when I can show up lovingly and I can take care of myself and my environment and others, then I'm sitting in a deep place of respect and honoring, and I no longer have to worry that I'm going to be left alone. When I think about it, Mother Earth has always provided for me. The sun has come up every day and provided the light to grow my food, and the earth has grown it for me. So why should I be in fear? So it's taking away this separation and this sense of being individual and returning it to a collective level. And I think what I discovered in the Andes is that it's based on the sacred feminine, which means that it grows like this and comes, as opposed to coming down. If you're good enough, you might access it. This is a very organic, earth-based reality, and it's something that has helped me to understand myself and my place in the world much more.
Yeah. Would be nice to know a little bit, how did you get in contact with these people?
I actually injured myself while I was filming a television show in 2002, and as I went through my process of healing, I started to realize that the injury, so to speak, wasn't just in the physical body. It was in my emotions. It brought up different belief systems or how I thought. It really started to show me that it's about consciousness. And then as I studied with different indigenous people around the world, I was given a book about the Andean tradition, and I went down, and as soon as I got there, I felt like I was at home. And what they occupied and how they treated each other, and the care and the respect. For example, in the Andes, they don't have, in the Quechua language, they don't have the word to have. So they don't have any possessive. They simply say, I'm with this. And so you think about that in comparison to what we do. We have things and we protect them and things like that. They just live in openness. And they live in loving presence, and they take care of all things. The land, the people, the animals, the earth, and the stars. And they realize they're part of this much larger picture. And in that way, they live holistically.
But since they're coming out now, you say, in these times, all the Indians are coming out now and telling about how they're living, and just to show us an example what we can do to heal Mother Earth. What are they waiting for? What is going to happen? Do they say anything about that? What's going to happen to Mother Earth?
The Earth is turning over, what they call is the New Earth, or Tierra Nuevo. And it's a time now where we have seen enough difficulty, we've seen enough symptoms of separation and scarcity, that we're starting to say, that doesn't work for me anymore. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired to be alone. I'm tired to be afraid of you. I want to something different. So they've been watching us for a very long time. And it's not just the Pacos in the Andes, it's the Kogi people in Colombia, it's the Sami people here in Lapland, in these areas. It's all the indigenous wisdom keepers, the Maori, the Aboriginals, the Native Americans. And they are presenting this information to say, you've specialized, and as a result of that, using this part of your brain so much, you've neglected this part. And this is how this part operates. And when you put those two things together, you come into a holistic paradigm again. And as this earth is changing, there's a term kind of in spiritual circles called ascension. And so we're ascending, we're rising to a different understanding or a different frequency. And they're there to assist us. And in order to get there, we have to remember who we are and where we came from. And when we put all that back together, we're actually going to remember who we are. So for me, what I realized is we're not learning anything new. We're just remembering what we forgot.
Yes.
And so it's kind of ironic that there's really nowhere to go and nothing to do other than sit back in receptivity and receive the energy, or receive the information, receive that intelligence. And that's what I mean by sacred feminine. The sacred feminine sits and receives instead of doing. So for 6,000 years we've done a lot of doing, and we've created beautiful things, but it's out of balance. Or you might say it's in balance, but it's going to be more in balance when we bring the rest of it together. And so all the wisdom keepers and the Pacos have been very active to bring this out of the mountains, and what they say is make it part of everyday experience, hide it amongst the masses, make it part of our consciousness again. And then when we have that recognition that whatever I do what's best for you, and you do the same for me, we're in harmony. And what happens to society when that spreads out is it takes care of all the problems. They disappear because they're no longer here. So it's not that we have to do anything to change it. We just simply change our hearts, and I show up in loving presence and invite that from everything in my environment. Everything that is of separation and difficulty evaporates because we're choosing not to go there anymore. And that's a very different construct than Western man has created.
Totally. And that's why it's so difficult to understand what's going on and what we have to do. But when you were there 10 years, did you come into the same kind of consciousness they were in? That you could feel the energies around you, you can feel the earth and feel what's right to do and all these things? Yeah,
I would say to an extent. I had studied in many different traditions. I studied with Native American tradition, shamanic traditions. I've been up with the Inuit in the Arctic. I've been with the Aboriginals. And I've learned, or the Tibetans, and I've learned different things in studying yoga and being a yoga teacher and a masseuse and Reiki master. And as I rebuilt myself from that initial injury, I became certified or initiated in many different things. And when I came to the Andes, they put me through a process of initiation where you would have to go into situations, into the unknown, and figure out how to show up there without knowing what you're doing. And in the West, when we go to school, we learn things and memorize them to regurgitate it, to have the answer. But this is all about showing up without the answer and letting yourself find the wisdom without trying. And so they just put me through many opportunities, you might say, to operate differently. And slowly, over time, I softened. And I had to die to myself because I kept on showing up saying, like this kind of energy. And they'd say, no, just relax. And that initiation process started to make me aware of more subtle energies and frequencies. I started to have contacts with celestial energies and the terrestrial energies. So I developed a relationship directly with Mother Earth, the entity or the being that is Mother Earth, as well as the elementals. Part of the initiation in the Andes, when you become a celestial Paco, which I am, they strike you with lightning. And so I was struck in the head by lightning by my mentor. And that, I still, 8 years later now, I don't know how to explain what happened, other than it hurt. But something shifted automatically, like rebooting your computer here, and a whole different operating system appeared.
Wow.
And in that, something shifted, and I kind of had, okay, now I have a different perspective. And then I just nurtured that, and they led me through this process. And little by little, I just started to, I think, embody the thing that I always wanted in life, but I didn't know was there because it wasn't available in Western life. It was reserved with the native people or the Buddhist people. So it was a coming home for me. And
how do you use these experiences in? You're back in normal life now. You're traveling around with this movie, and how have you changed your life?
I've learned to trust a lot more. So, for example, the filmmaker part of me, when I was making the film, I was thinking I have to direct it. I have to know what I'm doing, and I'm responsible for all this. And I quickly understood that I had to actually learn how to get out of the way and not direct. And there'd be times when I was down there and the energies or the entities, whatever you want to call them, would say, now Jeffrey, just sit there with a camera and stop thinking what you have to do and let us show you what we would like to convey. And when I started to edit the film in the same way, I had to sit back and let it happen and just use myself as a tool or an instrument to allow it to be what it wanted to be. And what happens in the film is it's actually a transmission through light and sound, the medium of film, of something about heart intelligence. So when you watch the film, you may not understand in your mind what it is, because the mind can't really understand it, but the heart gets it. And so what I've noticed from people all over the world now is that they have the experience of the film or some of the programs that go along with the film that we offer, and then a day or days or a week later, something starts to change, and I've gotten emails saying, I'm different now, and I don't know why, I don't understand it. And I say, good, something you've got it.
Yeah.
Now it's a matter of sitting there and allowing it to realize itself. So what I tend to do is I tend to just go into the world, and instead of looking at something as good or bad, I say, what is the gift of this situation? You know, what was the gift of a building nearby being blown up? How did it bring the people together? How did it wake them up? And what's interesting in the world is all the things that are perceived as negative now is actually causing us to choose positivity. And so I've just kind of become a person that operates that way as much as I can day to day. And when I realize that I'm not there, I look at my ego, and I just sit in humility, and I ask for realization. And I can say that my 2-year-old and my 6-year-old, my 2 sons, are my biggest teachers, because they're already there in that consciousness. And they're just kind of pointing out, saying, you're not there in that aspect, Dad. And then I go, thank you. Sometimes I but I just try to show up. And what I realize is the more I show up, the more that invites other people to show up. And so I've been traveling with the film for a year quite extensively. And it doesn't matter what country I'm in, it doesn't matter what language or what culture or how much money a country has or not, or what their politics are. There's something in the human heart, in that intelligence, that comes up and meets there. And I see the film as an ambassador that reaches out and speaks to people, and I'm just an attendant that goes along with it and answers questions with deeper questions, hopefully. So that's how I tend to operate now.
Fantastic. Can I, just a little bit, when you talk, you get more and more interested in the questions. Everybody's talking about being in your heart, but you're talking about using the heart intelligence. And that's what you get in contact when you're in the now, when you just trust things, you're in the heart intelligence. But what happens with your normal intelligence? These apocalypse people, are they in contact with both their brains?
Absolutely.
And the heart?
Absolutely.
So that's the main thing, to get in contact with your whole brain and your heart?
Yeah, you have to weave the intelligence and the analytical part, the left hemisphere, with the all-knowing, intuitive right hemisphere. And then in our culture, we've put the brain at the top, our mind, and the heart is, I've said before, it's just an organ, it's not anything really. And what they have always known and are offering is, when we ascend, we're actually ascending back into our heart. So the heart intelligence takes the lead, and the mind becomes a tool and always follows the heart. And I found that's a very powerful way to live, because when I feel and I sit from that heart place and say what is best for not just myself but all, then I can use my brain to figure out, given what I have at my disposal, how can I facilitate that. And when I do that work, it causes this force to come out of the heart in what we'd call generosity. And it's like a toroidal field, so it comes out and it creates a vacuum and actually pulls sustenance into me. So instead of just giving away everything and being angry because I'm empty, as I give, I receive, and that's that I need, that right relationship. And I found it to be amazing. At first it was very difficult because issues of scarcity or fear would come up, but the more I did it, the more I trained myself, just like flexing a muscle. And those muscles that have atrophied or gone to sleep are starting to wake up again. And so in the Andes they also have ceremonies of the mysteries, they call them, and they're the aspects of our consciousness that have gone to sleep or been deprogrammed. And so with the film and with the programs we offer and with the pilgrimages in the Andes, for example, you get to have a first-hand experience to retrain yourself into these ways of being. And you get to see people operate in a way that is completely holistic. They've never lost it. And that's really what the film is. It gives you a chance to go in to a situation where it's not narrated by somebody, and you just get to listen to them and experience them, and you may not even understand what they're doing, but I found it's a beautiful invitation. And when I edited the film is all in Quechua, their native language.
Yeah.
And I was wanting to put it into English, but I was concerned it'd be too left brain or Western languages. But what I realized is when you get to understand it and read it, you understand what they're saying and how they're saying it is so beautiful that it adds a whole different dimension. So I decided to put it in. When the DVD comes out in 2 months, you get the option to watch it without or with.
Okay.
And it's a completely different experience. So you're not reading, you're just experiencing the energy. But when you read it, you get a much deeper understanding.
Okay. Maybe we should look at it with translation first, and then look at afterwards one more time, then without even reading the things under.
I like I've offered it in workshops where we offer the first night with no translation, and then the next night with translation, and you get a certain amount, you get the energy and the experience the first night, and then you get the understanding. And that's the same as the heart intelligence. You have the experience, so there's something that I'm feeling here, I don't quite understand it between you and I, for example, and then oh yeah, we speak the same heart language. We come from, we share history. We have chosen our lives to devote ourselves to something bigger than ourselves. Things like that. So I think that's what heart intelligence means to me. Yeah.
Just to motivate people to think about this, because I've seen pictures and they try to show that the heart intelligence is much more powerful than the brain.
Absolutely.
So it's maybe very interesting to get in touch with this heart thing. But we have lots of courses in the Unity Center here about self-development and all these things, and everything is, I think, a little bit about getting more into your heart and getting rid of your traumas and all these things. Yeah. But can you say anything just to motivate people to get in touch with their heart? What sounds like your life is totally different, and that's because you're in the heart.
Yeah, it's different for me now, and I say I hurt myself, I injured myself, and now at that time I thought it was an accident. Now I look back and it was on purpose. It was a wake-up call, because I was working in a way that was detrimental to myself, but I didn't even see I was doing that. I had no idea that the heart intelligence maybe even existed, because I wasn't trained. When I go into business, no one else is operating there, and so what I know and how I do it gives me raises and gives me recognition. And this is exactly the opposite. But you still get self-recognition, and those people who understand this. What I realize is, as a business owner, I want to work with the people that understand that aspect, and so I may bypass something else in order to do that. And one of the things that I think is a motivation for me, and I encourage all of you to understand, is when you get into a situation where you don't know something, that's actually the most powerful place you can be. Because in the wisdom keeping traditions, you realize if I know something, it's actually a limitation. I've defined it. Yeah. It's from here to here. When you sit and say, I don't know, and you pray or you ask for assistance, it can show up in any number of ways, and probably even greater than you can imagine. And over time, the last 15 years, I've come to realize that time and time again. The motivation is that we have to be responsible for ourselves. We have to be responsible to do this work. In a sense, we've all been waiting for somebody else to do it for us. We've been trained to wait for government to do it, to business, and it's not going to happen.
Not working.
It has to happen one person to another. And as simple or even as silly as it may sound, if you can just change your heart, you can go into that place and show up there, you'll invite others into that space. Some people may not be ready or willing to go to that space, but I have found people all over the world just so dying to be there, literally dying to be there. And that brings up the topic of dying. You have to, and I don't mean physically dying, I mean dying to your ideas, dying to your associations, who you think you are. If I'm to say, my name is Jeff, that's not really who I am, right? That's just what my parents named me. So we're talking a little mystical here, but it's how do you develop a place where you can go and be seen and be held by your environment and by the people there? And it takes a lot of courage, because if you go out on the street, you may not feel that kind of reciprocity. You may not feel that safety. You may not even have the financial support. But I have found, because I had to, because I was injured and lost that work that I was doing before, that it came out of a process of faith, and nothing works without that trust and that faith. And it's not really a religious type of faith or a disempowered type of faith. It's a type of faith of saying, I'm going to intend and put out what I'd like to receive, and trust that that is going to be answered. And what I found working with the angelic realms is they're always answered, all the time. The more I can pray into what is not only good to myself but all people, then those prayers are answered even larger. So I'm just a conduit for something that I'm a part of, but that's greater than me.
So everybody can do this.
Oh, it's our birthright.
Yes.
And I think that's what we're coming to understand now, and that's why the Wisdom Keepers are giving us this information, or reminding us of this information, is because this is the time. And if you just look outside, the change that's happening right now, there's maybe a lot of darkness happening, or the perception of darkness, but there's so much change. There's so many people waking up. There's people not buying into these made-for-TV movies like the shooting down in the plain of Ukraine and all this stuff that's been created to keep people trapped, to cause wars. And people are saying, no, I'm not buying into that anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to sit here and not buy into that. And if you do that alone, you're not fighting, you know. As soon as you enter the fight, you've lost. You know, but I've come to understand that eternity, you know, heaven, whatever you call it, never shows up in the fight. So as soon as I start arguing with something, I've lost. As soon as I give in and say it's not, you know, how can I help this situation? I've opened a space so something greater than me can show up. And to me, that's the greatest motivation. It only comes through experience. So it's the courage it takes to open the space and be vulnerable, to be receptive, to trust, and to not know.
Goosebumps.
Yeah. And then when you do that space, and then it's reciprocated, and you receive something, and something happens, all of a sudden you have the experience that your trust has been fulfilled. And then it gives you more trust to do it again, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's really been my process over the last 10 years, is to learn how to trust enough that I get out of the way of what's trying to unfold naturally. But because we live in separation, we keep on stopping everything because we're afraid of it. You know, and it's ironic.
Fantastic. I think we have talked in a half an hour already.
Really?
Yes. We usually we end it if you have something you want to tell the earth, tell the world, some. But I think you said it all now. Anything else you think of?
I just would encourage you to follow your heart. A lot of people ask me, I'm in this situation, what should I do? And I always say, follow your heart. You know, and that is that place of quietude where you take the things you've learned, like yoga to soften your body, and meditation to quiet your mind so that you can listen to what's going on besides your head talking. And just go in and feel, is this an uh-huh or a uh-uh? And then just, even if it's one time a day, just do that one thing. And people say, oh, but it's so big to change everything. And it's like, well, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You just little by little start to live this way. And what happens, your life just starts to transform little by little. And it gets to a certain point, just like a leaf growing or a cell growing, and it divides and becomes two. Those are the quantum leaps. And then enough of us monkeys get together, 100 of us, and then it all changes. And I'm seeing it happening throughout the world right now as I travel.
Fantastic. So. Okay, I recommend everybody to see the movie. And the movie was called Wisdom Keepers.
Wisdom Keepers, Paco Andino, and you can go on to the website pacoandino.com, and
I'll write it down
you
here.
can watch it online there. And as I mentioned earlier, the DVDs will be out probably just after the new year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.